everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Shapiro the Hero, aka Daddy Dreidels. Week 11 is in the books, which means everybody has now played each other at least once this year. We also saw another shakeup in the standings, and several teams switched from buyers to sellers right at the deadline. As always, we'll go around the league looking at scores and stats right after this word from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Lyra Health. If you're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, or you just need to talk to someone, Lyra Health is there. They partner with most insurance companies, and they can find a therapist that works for you, whether it's in-office or remote. Lyra, a new standard for mental health. We'll start this week's recap off with the annual Riotica Bowl, which had real playoff implications for both Jed and Josh. But when the clock hit 000, it was Josh giving his brother an L for a wedding present as he got the win, 144.51 to 108.3. Captain Jameis Winston led not only Josh's team with 62.25 points, but all of Team Daddy, as Josh picks up $10 for having the week's highest scoring player. Josh also got 16.6 points from Austin Eckler and 14.1 points from Justin Jefferson. For Jed, it was Breece Hall leading the scoring with 31.1 points, but unfortunately, Jed's first week as a married man did not go the way he wanted to, at least in fantasy football anyway. Now at 5-6, Jed drops below the cut line for the playoffs based on points scored. He will try to make up some ground this week when he takes on Armenti. Meanwhile, Josh is now 8-3 after back-to-back wins and looking like a lock for the postseason. He can clinch a spot this week with a win over Kyle. Speaking of Kyle, he took on Steve this week in a potential preview of the Toilet Bowl, but after the water stopped, it was Steve left standing with a 109.8 to 77.2 win. Captain Josh Downs led the way for Steve with 29.1 points, and Steve also got 23.8 points from Patrick Mahomes en route to his second win of the season. On the other sideline, Kyle was led by Jaden Daniels with 17.35 points, but could not find much offense elsewhere, as Kyle fails to break 100 points for the second week in a row and the fourth time this season. With both teams now at 2-9 and just about eliminated from the playoffs, Steve and Kyle will try to ride it out for the remainder of this year as they gear up for the consolation bracket. Steve will take on PJ in Week 12, while Kyle will face off against Josh. We're going to mix it up this week, and we're going to actually look at the last team currently out of the playoffs, Big John. His late season struggles continued this week as he lost to Brett, 184.75 to 152. Jared Goff led the way for Brett with 56.7 points, and Brett also got 37.65 points from Captain Jawan Jennings. For Big John, Captain Tua carried the load with 53.1 points, but that zero from Tyler Kraft definitely didn't help. Now at 4-7, Big John is only one game out of a playoff spot, but will need some help to get back into position. He will try to take that first step this week against Swans. Meanwhile, Brett is now 5-6 and currently finds himself on the right side of the postseason line. He will try to keep it going this week when he takes on George. Speaking of Brother to You, he took a tough L this week against Swans, losing 218.2 to 192.1. Captain Josh Allen led the way for Swans with 42.9 points, as he put up the highest scoring team total this week. Swans also got 38.8 points from Saquon Barkley and 36.3 points from Brock Bowers. On the other sideline, George was led by Joe Burrow with 45.6 points, but ultimately falls despite scoring the third most points in the league. Sometimes that's just the way the fantasy gods work, but I digress. Swans and George are both now 6-5, and both teams look poised for a postseason berth. Swans will look for his second consecutive win when he takes on Big John in Week 12, while George will try to get back into the win column as he faces Brett. Turning now to the number one overall team in the league, the Zach train kept right on rolling this week, but this time it was super close, as Zach escapes with a 155.2 to 154.13 win over PJ. This time it was Taysom Hill leading the way for Zach with 49.7 points, and Zach also got 19.3 points from Chase Brown. For PJ, Brock Purdy led the scoring with 32.93 points, but PJ takes yet another tough loss, this time by just over a point. At least you can't blame the captain's bonus this week. Now at 5-6, PJ will take on Steve next week as he tries to stay alive in the playoff hunt. Meanwhile, Zach is now 10-1 after his 9th straight win. He and I will square off in Week 12 with Zach in search of his 10th win in a row. Our final match of the week pitted my 3-game win streak against Armenti's 4-game win streak. But, of course, as all good things must do, my win streak came to an end this week, as it was Armenti coming away with a win to 11.8 to 139.15. Joe Mixon led the way for Armenti with 44.3 points, and Armenti also got 43.7 points from Amon-Ra St. Brown. My team was led by Jackson Smith and Jigba with 26.8 points, but I was not able to touch the second highest scoring team of the week. With this loss, I am now at 5-6 and still in a playoff spot for now based on points scored. I'll try to get back to 500 next week when I take on Zach, which will not be easy. Meanwhile, Armenti is now 8-3 after his 5th straight win. He will go for 6 in a row next week when he faces off against Jed. Here are the Team Daddy standings after week 11. Zach remains in first at 10-1, followed by Armenti and Josh at 8-3. Next up we have George in 4th and Swans in 5th, both at 6-5. Behind them are myself, Brett, and PJ rounding out the playoff teams at 5-6. Jed is in 9th, also at 5-6, but on the outside looking in based on points scored. Big John is in 10th at 4-7, but definitely not out of the race. Finally, we have Kyle in 11th and Steve in 12th, both at 2-9. A reminder that the deadline for trading draft picks is midnight on Wednesday the 20th, so make sure your trades are in by then. And don't forget to send your captain picks to Swans or Brett by the kickoff on Thursday night. Thank you as always for watching. This has been your Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Shapiro the Hero, and I will see you next time. L'chaim, motherfuckers!